So we wanted to take the time today to kind of remind everybody that, even in a chaotic market, even though a lot of things are changing and they're changing fast, what it really comes down to is just getting back to the basics and focusing on the fundamentals. And so that's what we're going to share. That's what I'm here today to share with you. And so let me go ahead and kick us off. All right, so I want to share with everybody that it actually all started for me personally by reading this book. So for those of us who are in the industry or is definitely doing real estate investing, a lot of us refer to this book, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, as the Purple Bible. I think it's the book that really came out and just kind of inspired people to think differently about what it comes to, investing. And so it's really a book about mindset. And I remember when I first read this book, I always suspected that I always knew that I wanted financial freedom for myself and I wanted to build generational wealth for my family. Even at the time I didn't have a family, but I knew I wanted one day. And I kept asking myself, what, I don't know how does that happen? And I remember when I read this book, it was like the aha, right? And I was like, real estate. I also was always interested in real estate. Like every time I saw a property or a house, I would always want to take a look at it, always wanted to check it out, what was different, all that stuff. So I just always had that affinity, but what I didn't know was I didn't know how and I didn't know in what way. And what this book really showed me is that it was not just real estate, it was real estate investing. It gave me the word. And as soon as I heard the word real estate investing, I was like, that is it. That's what I want to do. I want to be the person who not necessarily shows homes, but the person who looks at properties and looks at deals and will be able to say, I want this one or I want that one and figure that out. And so for me, it started with this book. The other thing I want to share in particular, a message with this book was that in here, Robert also mentions that it's not about how necessarily, it's about who. And I would tell you at the time, I didn't really understand what that meant. So it was profound information, but in my mind, I was like, okay, read this book, I want to get going. How do I do it? Right. And one of the things was understanding what. And so in 2004, I was actually on active duty in the Army, stationed at Fort Stewart, Georgia. And I was 24 years old at the time. I saw a lot of development happening in the place. For those of you who are around in that time, that market was really when pretty much if you were someone who had a pulse or breathing, essentially you could get a loan. And so I was 24, single, no kids, but had student loan debt, had no credit to speak of, and somehow I managed to get a loan in that market. And so, but at the time, right, all I knew is what I wanted. And so I said, I want a house to live in. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to do real estate investing at some point, I need to choose a house that will eventually convert to a rental. And so to me, that meant I needed to, you know, that's what I wanted to do. And I didn't necessarily know how, right? Which is why I shared the quote here with Anthony Robbins, right? As soon as you truly commit to making something happen, the how will reveal itself. And so even though I didn't know how I was going to get there because I was living in Georgia, which by the way, I'm originally from Guam. So I grew up and then I went to college in San Francisco and then I joined the army, which brought me to Georgia. And so I didn't have family, I didn't have friends, I didn't have, people that I could talk to about this. I just knew what I wanted, which was thanks to that book, I knew I wanted to get started in real estate investing. And I figured the first step was to buy a property that I could live in and then eventually convert into a rental. And at the time, what I found was I did end up finding a realtor who helped show me the properties. I did end up using my VA loan, which was a benefit that I get of being service. And basically, it was all traditional, right? I didn't know any better. I just knew, okay, if I wanted to buy a house, I needed to get that realtor. And if I wanted to finance the house, I needed to go get a loan. Now, that being my first property, one of the things that I learned then, because again, I still didn't really understand, I really was still very much focused on the what and the how. And so did it happen? Did I make it? Yes, I got to the closing table. I was 24 years old at the time. I think that deal cost me like $700 to close when I bought that first property. And so I was like, all right, success, right? I did it. Thankfully, not too long after that, right? Because again, I was focused on the what, and then the how, what ended up revealing itself too was learning how to, at the time, I was like, okay, I have this house, I'm single, no kids. Do I really need this whole house? Actually, the picture in the photo is that property. So it's a 3 bedroom, 2 bath. And what was neat about it was that it had a split floor plan. And so it actually lended itself to me getting a roommate. And so what that meant was, so today we all know that as house hacking. But at the time, I was just like, hey, I have these rooms, I'm not using it. I actually happened to have a friend who was needed to find a place, and she didn't want to live as close to base. She wanted that area, and so she was looking for an apartment. And I was like, hey, I have space. Do you want to just be roommates? And so that just worked out. And so again, at the time, we didn't know, like it wasn't called house hacking at the time, but it was just one of those things where, if you had the space and someone could move in and help pay you rent, that's rental income, it's passive, it's, it just really worked out. And so I ended up really between the housing allowance and getting rental income, I think I was only paying like maybe a couple $100 a month for that property. Somebody else was paying that mortgage down. And so that's really how things got started for me in that market. Right. Now, I was on active duty for about 6 years, and each year I like moved, which is not very common. And so it made it really hard with my desire, right, to get into real estate investing, to really do it, to kind of scale or accelerate, because I wasn't living anywhere long enough to develop any relationships to figure out the what and the how. So when I moved to Colorado in 2008, I totally fell in love with the city. I was like, oh my gosh, mountain home. I love it. What do I need to do to stay? So I actually ended up exiting active duty and decided to make Colorado Springs in particular, my mountain home. Well, this was 2008 in time, and if any of you were here during that time or in the industry, you would know that 2008 was probably what was when the market crashed, right? And so everybody else was running away, and there I was running right in because I was like, this is awesome. I get to basically pick any property I wanted because it was a buyer's market. You basically named your price and you could choose whatever. Uh, but I think I shared with you that I just got out of active duty, so that meant I didn't have a job. I had some credit, but it wasn't, like no one at the time was going to give you credit if you didn't have a W-2, right? And so I had that, that was my situation. But what I did have was I knew what I wanted. And what I wanted was I wanted to take advantage of the fact that everybody was running away. And in my experience, if you want to be successful in life, you do what other people don't do. So if everybody's doing this, you need to do that. And that's where your success will be. And so knowing that, I was like, all right, I want to really get into this whole real estate investing thing. The market is primed for me to just go in. But now, how do I do that? Right. But again, I started with I wanted a property. And at the time, I said I wanted a fixer upper because prior to that, I was buying property that I lived in and then later converting it into a rental. And this time I was like, now I want a fixer upper where I want to buy it straight as an investment property, and then I want to do the work to actually renovate it and see where that goes. And so, but again, I didn't know how because I just got off active duty. That meant I didn't have any friends, or the friends that I had or the people that I was serving with all either about to retire or they were, military life, they were going to move to another place or something along those lines. It was going to change. So I knew I had to get out into the community and start networking and making friends. And in doing that, that's how I found other people who maybe wanted to do real estate investing, but they didn't have the time or the experience, but they had money and they wanted someone to leverage that for them. So that's where the how revealed itself to me, because then I realized through traditional financing, right? Because at the time that was not an option for me. I couldn't use my own couldn't leverage the things that I didn't have salary, right? A W-2 income. So those are the things that you normally need when you go through traditional financing. So I had to figure out another way. And the way that that happened was figuring out how to use private money, right? So try to find somebody who had money, but no time and no experience, but were willing to trust you with that and see where it goes. I learned about how to transfer titling. So what you see on the screen there, quit claim deed. So somebody else financing, but then you still own the title. I learned how to do that. And again, these were not things that I knew. I just knew I wanted the property and I was willing to do whatever it took to get there. And because uh, I found an agent to work with. That agent is the one who actually helped me discover those things. And so this was the that I finally understood what Robert Kiyosaki was talking about, where he said, it's not about how you get there. It's about who you have on your team to get there with. Because at the end of the day, there's just so many moving pieces and parts to a transaction of doing real estate investing, and everybody can do that. But what not everybody can do is understand the relational aspect of it. And if you just have your team, you will surround yourself with all the people that you need to get to that closing table and to acquire that property. And so for me, it was that period of time where I realized the value of that real estate agent. And so that person then, her name is Jennifer Montoya. And I would tell you, at the time, I was also thinking that, gosh, I want to buy a property. I want it to be a fixer-upper. And I was so focused on buying a single family home, right? And so I was thinking I wanted a property with land and all of that. Well, Jennifer actually kept showing me townhomes. And so the picture that you see here was actually the investment property I was referring to at the time. So it was a townhome, and it was in an area that had an HOA. So bottom line, I could own the property, but I wouldn't own the land. And at the time, I was thinking, gosh, that doesn't make any sense to me. Why would I want to buy a property where I didn't own the land? Isn't land what makes the property appreciate value the most over time? And so Jennifer, she was so great because she too was in a real estate investor. She educated me. She's like, yes, no, you're right. And I understand where you're looking at this. But what I want to offer to you is that if you can buy the property, and you can look at it as the value of the land. I said, but there's another way to look at it. And the other way that you can look at it is through cash flow. If you took, the 50,000, right, and you bought a single family home with land, yeah, you can get that. And yes, maybe down the line it will appreciate so much. But normally the cost of that in comparison to a townhome where you don't necessarily own the land, but because you buy it so cheaply, your cash flow, your monthly positive cash flow that you would get in your pocket is going to be way greater than when you bought that other single family. And so she just, kind of conveyed that to me. And it really made me realize that I was like, oh. And so she asked me, she's like, well, what is it that you really want? Do you want to just own a property for the sake of owning property? Or do you want a property that's really gonna like put money in your pocket? Because they're different strategies. And so I was like, oh my gosh, you are so right. And I just didn't think about it that way because I just didn't know what I didn't know, but I needed her to understand that one, my desire was to grow my portfolio, but really above and beyond that was I wanted generational wealth, right? So that meant I should be buying assets that put as much money in my pocket today compared to what is possible down the line, because down the line, I have no control of the market. I have no idea what it's going to do, but I do have control over what property I buy because I could understand how much money will go in my pocket today. And so that was incredibly valuable information because, again, not only did she help me buy that first investment property, but that property, I think at the time, was all as soon as we bought it and fixed it up and turned it into a rental, we were already cash flowing like hundreds of dollars. And today, that property, I think was cash flowing almost over $1,000 a month. And so, but I didn't know that then. I just only knew that I wanted to buy property. And she reminded me that my goal wasn't just to buy property, my goal was long term. I'm in it for the long game. And that being said, I really should consider buying property for the sake of cash flow. And so again, that was like such an aha for me when Jennifer was like, and if I had found any other realtor, for example, when I was in Georgia, that realtor, he was transactional. He just wanted me to sign the papers and help me buy that property. And in fact, he didn't even show up to the closing table. That's how transactional he was. He just wanted me to show property, sign the paper, all right, done deal. Jennifer, on the other hand, was a different type of person. And she would not only was she licensed, and yes, she showed me property, but she really kind of coached me through the process. And I think if it weren't for her, I would have probably went down a completely different path. And so the lesson of, yes, you want to know what, you don't necessarily need to know how, but more importantly, who you align yourself with is really what's going to get you there. And so between 2008 and 2014, I just totally dug in. I surrounded myself with people I knew needed to be a part of the transaction. And so going out, networking, interviewing them. And the key thing that I wanted to know is I wanted to know if one, what they were saying is what they do, right? Do they practice what they preach? And also, are they an investor themselves? Because quite frankly, yes, you could find someone who can do the work and be the expert, but to find somebody who has the mindset that you share, like it's a completely different ballgame. So I knew that's what I needed. And so that's what I sought out. And so what you're seeing before you is the people that I knew to have on my team in order to grow and scale and accelerate my strategy and my goal of acquiring a larger portfolio. And so I'm just going to talk through these a little bit just so everyone has a good understanding of each person's role and why you need them. And so I'll start here on the left, the top left, so the real estate broker. So you heard me earlier say real estate agent. If you weren't of the key difference is the real estate agent, yes, it's the licensure piece. They can show you property and whatnot. Um, but the broker is usually the person because and the key difference is time, right? Anyone who is a broker has done the time and has just done a lot more numbers so that and what that means, what that translates it matters to you is the fact that they have just that much more experience and expertise because they've done so many transactions and helped so many people. They just know that much more. And so at the end of the day, I would say you want a real estate agent, right? Because you need someone who's licensed to represent you. But if you could find a broker, that's definitely where I would target, right? But that's what you need. Getting over to the right, you also want a general contractor. So depending on what it is you're trying to do, in my case, I I really enjoyed buying ugly properties and fixing them up to a level that I would attract higher end tenants. And so to do that, I really needed a general contractor who's willing to work with me because you need that person to come in when you're doing the walkthrough to kind of identify where the major expenses could be to reflect on your budget. And then, of course, you need, them to do the work, and you want that work to be quality, right? And so, developing a relationship with the GC is really key if that's what you want to do. All right. Going to the right, the loan officer. I would say when it comes to it really does come down to money, right? But it doesn't necessarily have to be your own money, but at the end of the day, to purchase property, most people need financing, right? And whether it be through traditional pathways like a loan officer or you find private money or other ways, when you're getting started, financing is going to be a key part of the person that you need to help get to the closing table. All right. And there's so many, what I have learned is there's so many loan products out there, it could be incredibly overwhelming. So just finding the right loan officer and lean on them, right? Let them figure out, like, what you want and you communicate that, the loan officer will help understand your profile, right? To help you figure out what's the best product for you. And so they will do that. So you don't necessarily have to be the person who learns what is a VA loan, what is an FHA loan, what is this, what is that? They already know that and they will advise you and they'll show you the numbers so that you can figure out which one, and then you get to choose, right? Which ones you qualify for and what risk you're willing to assume. But that's what the loan officer will do for you. All right, to the right, your legal advisor, you would definitely, I would say, hopefully it doesn't happen too much, but if you're in this game for a while, it's going to happen. It's inevitable that something will happen where you're going to need a legal advisor to assist you or to guide you. And so I would definitely have that person, have a person and a number that you can call when situations like that happen. Getting to the bottom left, tax advisor. This is the person, right? Because at the end of the year, right, if you're have all these properties and you're generating income through rentals, right, you're gonna have to claim that on your taxes, and there's deductions you can have. A lot of people are always like, oh, that's a tax deduction or that's a business expense. And they say that, but sometimes they don't always know how that translates to actually filing your taxes. And I'm here to tell you that you don't have to know all of that, right? The fact that you just know that rental income, right, you have to report it and that there's deductions, you just got to save your receipts. If you have the right tax advisor for you, they will guide you through that process. And you really just got to hand them your information and they will advise you on, what you can and cannot deduct or what you can do differently to help reduce your tax liability and have some tax savings. All right. Heading over to the bottom middle there, property manager. I did a lot of my own self-managing when I first got started, right? Because, most people I think charge about 10%. I know it's not straight across the board on all the different markets, but in my experience, average industry charge for a property manager is 10% of whatever the rent is. And so at the time when I was just getting started, I wanted to save that 10%. And two, I just wanted to learn. I wanted to understand what it takes to actually manage a property. And so I self-managed my own portfolio and I learned all the things I needed to do to protect that asset. Now I'm a remote landlord, and so now I just manage the property managers in each of the states that I have properties in. And I would tell you that person is so key because if you are remote, if you're not physically there in person to take care and do all the things to protect your asset, and you don't have a good property manager who will do that for you, odds are you're gonna lose that property. Worst case, you lose a lot of money at it. But the property manager is who is going to help you, make sure that investment or that asset is protected. So, because they will be there, they will do all the things, and when situations arise, because eventually they do, they'll be the one. So, let's say a natural disaster happens, there's a hailstorm, there's a leak in the roof, right? You don't necessarily want, if you don't want that tenant to call you, that's what your property manager can do. They will call the property manager. Property manager will go out, find the trade that needs to address that roof to either fix it, to fix the leak, or then fix the roof. Coordinate with the tenants for times. They will do all that work. And so if that's something you enjoy doing, that's great. There's a lot of tools these days to help you do that even remotely. But if that is something you don't want to do, then the person that you need is the property manager. All right, and then to the bottom right, I want to share the insurance agent. I have definitely learned the lesson that when stuff happens and you have to make a claim, having an insurance agent who will advocate for you is so important because these days, there's just a lot of loopholes that are possible when it comes to not just submitting your claim, but the payout of the claim, right? And so stuff like that does happen. So again, having an insurance agent who not only understands the terms and conditions, but who knows how to navigate the system so that when you do when you do submit a claim, so if you got that hailstorm, right, and you need to get the roof completely replaced, you submit that claim to the insurance company, but your agent can help if the numbers come back, right, and something doesn't look right or they're paying too little, that insurance agent can help advise you on what you can do differently, either get a different quote or resubmit for something. Like they can help you navigate that, and that's why that's really important. All right, so these between 2008 2014 when I was buying property in Colorado Springs, these are the people that I took time to bring into my team, and that's what helped me be able to grow, scale, and accelerate my portfolio and doing real estate investing. Well, then I moved overseas and then lived in Korea, then I lived in Japan, and so I was no longer buying properties where I lived, or as some people call it, in my backyard. But I'll tell you, um, those relationships that I have really came to light when I decided I was going to buy a property in Wisconsin. And so at the time, this was 2023, I was living in Japan, and I had an opportunity to sell one of my properties, and we decided we were going to buy in Wisconsin. And the reason is because my spouse her family lives in Wisconsin, and we knew we were going to travel there a lot because they don't travel to us, we have to travel to them. And so we were like, okay, well, maybe if we bought a property in Wisconsin, we some of our personal travel expenses into business expenses. And so we are like, okay, we're going to do that. Well, we didn't know anything about the Wisconsin market. We were living in Japan. There was no way we were going to fly all the way to Wisconsin to start looking at property. So we knew we needed a broker. And so I was able to leverage our network to find a referral. And then I think I interviewed like 3 different real estate brokers. And I got so super lucky. I found the one. And what was incredibly amazing about that is that as soon as I found that one broker, right, you saw in the previous slide all the people you need or that you want to have action. I didn't need to find any of those other broker had all those relationships. And he was so excellent that everyone that he referred me to was also excellent. So when my financing that I brought to the table fell through, he found me a replacement. When I had trying to figure out the property out, because I was trying to go in and interview myself, I was trying to research it, and I didn't because that broker had all the connections I could ever need and want. And so that just was that solidified for me that, gosh, if at the end of the day it doesn't come down to tools, right? It doesn't come down to, do I need, what website should I use? What software should I use? Because to me, those are just tools, and yes, that will help you. But if you want to get started in this game or you want to scale, it really comes down to who. So this is my overarching message after doing this for like the last, gosh, I guess it's been about 20 years. If there's anything that I want you to take away from this is that it's not, yes, you need to know what you want to do because who you line up will help you achieve that want. But if you're telling yourself, I need to figure out how, I need to learn all these things so that I could figure out how, I'm here to tell you, you do not. Just focus on the who, not the how. And if you were to ask me, of all those people, who are the top three that you absolutely need to have? And I would tell you, number one, if you only had one person that you can align yourself to get started, it is that real estate broker. You find that right real estate broker for you, and pretty much that will make a lot of your work easy. You could just focus on the what, and the broker will line you up with all the people that you need to get to closing, and anything else that pops along the way, they would advise you. The second person I think you absolutely need to have is a tax advisor. And I say that because of all the things in your life, the one thing that you will always do is you will pay taxes. And so having someone who understands your financial portfolio, your personal goals, and what you're trying to achieve, you don't want someone who's transactional. You don't want someone who you're just going to hand your receipts, take your data, spit it into, input it into some software, spit out some paperwork and be like, hey, just sign here, done. You want someone who's really going to get to know you, really get to understand what you're trying to achieve, and advise you on how you can leverage the tax code to get there. Right. And I've been very fortunate that and I've run through a few, but I'm very fortunate that I've been able to find someone, actually a couple people, to help me with that. And I will tell you, it has been hands down amazing, to have someone who can advise you on all these things. The next person that I would say you'd want to have on your team is that property manager. Again, if you are comfortable with self-managing, that's great. And again, there's so many tools available today that you can do that even remotely. You could be traveling all across the globe and still manage your property through software and virtual assistants. But again, the reason why it matters is because if you can't be there in person to do the things to take care of that asset, you're gonna lose it. Or you're either going to lose a ton of money and eventually lose the property. In fact, most people become landlords not because they want to. It's usually by happenstance, meaning they became accidental landlords. And most people pull out of it because of the property manager, because they just got too much anxiety. There was no communication. Just a lot of things go with that. And so if at the end of the day, you were to ask me, Anne, who are the three people? There is your three. And kind of want to talk end on this note, for me, you've heard me share like in the last 2 decades, learning first starting with what, figuring out how, but ultimately finally getting that profound advice that Robert Kiyosaki said, which is it's focused on the who. This is another book that has been really valuable to me. It's called Never Eat Alone, and it talks about the value, not just networking. So a lot of people talk about, you need to go out, you need a network, you need to meet this person, that person, and that's great, but that's not about, most people who do that, all they're doing is taking their business cards and literally just throwing it around. They'll go into a room and they're like, here's my business card, here's my business card. And you know what? That's not relationship building. That's you being transactional. And I would offer to you that, think about it differently. You're going to spend the time to hand out that business card. Wouldn't you want that business card to be kept and people to actually remember your name and what you do? I know I would. And so, but to do that, you really do have to shift your mind that it's not just about networking, it's about connecting. And in my mind, there's nobody else who speaks to that message better than Keith Ferrazzi. And so, on that note, I think that's all I had to share with you guys today. So hopefully you walked away with some really good insight onto how I have been successful in my journey and the things that I've learned along the way. I think with that, turn the floor back over to you.
Thank you so much, Anne. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides here again. That was really, really informative. I appreciate it. We're going to open it up to questions. So Anne covered a lot there. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and throw it in the chat or I don't know if they have a hand raising button on here. I'm not sure. Go ahead and let us know. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and open up the chat here.
I
Yeah, we
think
Oh,
I
got
saw some hand raising.
Tatiana.
oh yeah,
Got a few people with hands raised.
I see Erica. Why don't you
Yeah,
go ahead and go first?
Tatiana, and then Len, and then Erica.
Yeah. Hey, Erica, why don't you go ahead and go first? I see your hand.
Okay, sorry, I thought Dane was calling out people in a certain order.
Sorry, I didn't hear you,
Uh,
Dane.
anyway, I'm really quick. So yeah, that was freaking great, Anne. That's a lot of things you don't think about. Some people are like, "Oh, I want to find the property myself and save the money of paying a buyer's agent and blah blah." And it's like there's so much that goes into it. We're here with my TC right now. We're taking care of a property, doing all this stuff. Yeah, I mean it's a lot, and then making sure you're legally covered, like insurance. Because we know the things to ask and the things to check. A good agent will absolutely do what Anne said. They will go through, they will talk to you about what are your long-term goals, what are your short-term goals. They'll talk to you about, the rental value after, because a lot of people will sell you a property and don't give a shit what happens to you after, to be frank. The
Yeah.
person who's wondering what's going to happen to you after is the agent you want to work with. And like I said in the chat, if they're all pitching sunshine and rainbows and nothing bad about what could happen or whatever, that's probably not the right one, because there's always, you need to go into it hoping for the best, but expecting and planning for the worst. If you can't sell it for profit, can you rent it? Okay. And one of the things I definitely wanted to comment on is make sure you know the laws in the area. Um, you have to live on the island to manage yourself, or you have to have an island point of contact. Your on island point of contact could be a friend or something else, but anything they do on your behalf, and you are legally liable for them. So if they violate fair housing or they do anything like that, you violated fair housing. You're the landlord. You're the one who'll end up paying and getting in trouble. And you're also putting your friend in a delicate position too, where they could be in trouble. So just be very, very careful with that. Short-term rentals, absolutely. Before you get into any kind of short-term rental, know the laws in the area and if the laws are changing, because some agents know, some agents don't know, some won't tell you. But look, try to do as much research for yourself, because sometimes there won't be a law and they'll be like, no, there's no law right now, but they know darn good and well that it's coming down the pipeline. So, like I said, sunshine and rainbows, that's great, but let's talk about the ugly stuff too.
Yes, thank you so much, Erica. Yeah, I can't foot stomp that enough. And I've been very fortunate that I've been aligned with really great brokers, because there's just to take the time to learn all of it. It's just so much and it's so overwhelming, right? And you as an individual, your goal, I mean, if you want to know those things, that's great. But again, if your goal is really to acquire property and grow and scale, if you just align yourself with the right people, they will help get you there and they will advise you along the way. And I think one of the things you said, Erica, that I think is really great, and I hope you guys took away from that, is that when you go out and you're trying to find an agent, right, because you want to buy a property, the agent who actually spends times to get to know you as an individual is a very strong indicator that they may be the right person for you. Because not everybody does that. Everyone just wants to know, okay, what type of property you want to buy, what's your budget, what's your timeline. Like if those are the only questions they ask you, that is your indicator that this is a transaction to them. But if they take the time to get to know you, your family, what are the features you're looking for, what's important to you, that is a strong indicator that they're interested in you as a person, not just the transaction, not just the money. And that's who you want to spend more time with. Next question.
Yeah, I see here in the chat I didn't see any other hands raised, but I see Marco Riasco. He asked, how do you vet those roles?
How do I vet those roles? As in how do I find them? Or how do I interview them?
Yeah, I can
Uh,
clarify. So I had some people would say just Google property managers in the area. Some people say refer a friend, but is there key questions of like, okay, you know that it's more transactional versus relationship, as you mentioned?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So yes, I interview all of them. So yes, I will Google and research who has the I guess the credentials, if you will. So for example, if I'm looking for a real estate agent, I make sure that they're licensed right in that state. Same goes with a property manager. A property manager in most states are required to have a real estate license as well. But basically, so I I usually do at least three. So I try to find three people and I research what I could online. But of course, online isn't everything. And sometimes most of the people who are really good, they're not easy to get to, right? Because they don't necessarily need all the new business. They just do all word of mouth. So it's really important to not only ask for referrals, but also, do your online research as best as you can to kind of narrow it down to three. And then I definitely recommend spending time with all three. Like, and just be upfront when you talk to them, just say, hey, just to let you know, I am meeting other people, to find the right fit. And anyone who's been in this industry long enough and is successful, they will get that. They're not going to feel offended. They're going to be like, no, that's great. I'm glad that you're doing your due diligence, right? And so for every person that I meet for each role, I think the one thing that I look for more than anything is their values. I want to know that they are in it not just for the transaction, but they really do want to build a relationship with me, because that how they treat me is likely how they treat all their other relationships. And so if they treat me in a way that I feel like comfortable and I want to move forward, like that, odds are everybody else in their network operates the same way, right? Because the people that you surround yourself and keep close are very much a reflection of you. And I get insight into that and in the usually in the initial interview. But yeah, I'm always upfront that I'm just getting started and I'm just doing my due diligence. I'm meeting with a few people, and then I just get to know that person. And I think one of the things I usually try to ask too is what are their personal goals, right? And usually when people share that, it tells me if we're a good fit. So for me, I'm not just looking for someone who will help me with a transaction. I really want someone who is in it for the long term, and not just for me, but that is their personal goal. Because odds are, if that is what they do, then they would have gone through all the things, right? That and learned a lot of those lessons that they now can impart on me. So
Wow.
hopefully that's helpful.
Our next question is from John Carlo.
Mm.
He asks, can you provide how you found your people, word of mouth, Google chat? So it's similar to the last one, I think. And
Yeah.
um, I have 2 cents on this, but I'll let you go first, Anne.
Oh no, yeah, I do all. So
Yeah.
I think I usually start with word of mouth, right? Because I've been doing this for a while, I already have my own network, like internal network, my own sounding boards. And so usually I reach out to them first or my first line. But in the case of Wisconsin, right, like my network wasn't there. So Wisconsin was very much out of that scope. So what ended up happening is I had to ask my wife's dad to physically go to downtown Madison and go find me some brokers, get their contact info. And then I took that and then I scheduled Zoom calls with all of them and then interviewed them that way.
Yeah. Yes. So that's good information. I just want to also say, like, whatever network, and talked about network, like if you're in, Connecticut or whatever, your local real estate investing meetup, I think is always a good place to start. And like even our group, a network, right? Like joining a network of people who have tried and true done this stuff and have good recommendations because they've, no kidding, gone through it is such a great tool. That's a huge benefit. Um, Building
Absolutely.
your network, tapping into a network. And then we have one more question from Tatiana Borja. Is it important to factor, is speed an important factor with a good agent broker? And I know I know you have a story about speed, probably with lending, but like the speed at which people communicate. Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah. So, Tiana, when you say is speed an important factor, speed as in how responsive they are to you when you reach out and communicate, or speed as in getting you to closing?
Uh,
Can you
I think
clarify
both,
for me?
but I think both, but definitely like we have a like we worked with an agent when we bought our house and we really liked her, but I also felt like I was always waiting for a response, right? And I was kind of just like I'm already trying to figure things out before ever hearing from my agent. And I think she was really great, a genuine person, but one of the things was like, am I just being, am I the crazy one? Because I feel like we should be moving a little bit quicker on some things, and so is that an important thing to factor? And I guess it would be great if also we could sit down and maybe talk to you since you're on Guam, to help guide us through this. But that was one of the things I was like, I really like this girl, but also I felt like she kind of, so sometimes I felt like when I would ask a question, it was like, she was like, can you just wait? Like,
Yeah.
so
So
I'm
what I
wondering,
would
is it
offer,
fair?
based,
Yeah.
yeah, what I would offer based on what you said is it sounds like it's important to you, right? So getting responsiveness in a certain amount of time is important to you. And so it doesn't mean that she's a mean, she doesn't know what she's doing. It just probably means it's not the right agent for you because you do need somebody who is responsive. And if you communicate that, right? So communicate that, say, hey, this is something I really want to do. I'm, anxious about it because I want to do all these things. And so what I need from you as my agent is I need responsiveness, right? Like when I ask you, like, and maybe set some boundaries. Like if I send you a message, at like 4 o'clock, is it reasonable to get a response that day? Or maybe it's not, but then you ask her, right? You communicate what your needs are, and then she can respond with, "Hey, I can meet those needs, or I can't, or here's why." But just having that open communication, and again, at the end of the day, if what you need is responsiveness and you're not getting that from her, again, it's not a reflection on her skill, or she could just be really busy and have all these other things and give her the opportunity to communicate that, right? And then at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, it's not because you didn't like her or she didn't like you. It's not personal. It's just maybe it's not the right fit for that transaction that you're trying to do.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my baby. Sorry.
Oh, all good. I have 3 boys myself, so I get it.
All right.
Right.
I think I
Question?
don't see any more questions. Oh, Len, you has his hand raised. Go ahead, Len.
Yes, I had another question. And so, I did you find that when you're looking for a top broker, especially when you were starting and you had like, maybe just one property or just barely trying to hit the market, you being a
Yeah.
small investor at that point, did it make it difficult to get to the top investors? How do you make yourself a customer or a client that they want to work with, especially when you don't have a sizable portfolio that they know they're going to be working with you often and that you're worth their time?
Yeah, Len, that is such a great question. Thank you for asking that. Absolutely. And I experienced that in many times throughout my, doing this, and in particular with the Wisconsin one too, because again, I did my research right online and found other people. But ultimately what it came down to was finding the broker that's a fit for you, right? And so, because you're absolutely right, not all of them are going to have time to work with someone who's new. Maybe they're far enough in their career and they're very clear about the types of clients they're willing to take on. For example, financial advisors, another area that I get that, where financial advisors will say, I won't work with anyone unless you have like $1 million of assets that I can manage, right? So they set those boundaries. And so, again, it's something that you don't want to take personally. Like you're at where you're at, right? And at the end of the day, everyone has to start from somewhere. So if it means you start either having to learn on your own, or you do find someone who's willing to give you a shot. Maybe they're not a broker, maybe they're just an agent, but you just start there because at the end of the day, yes, you want to get to that broker, but if you can't get there for whatever reason, it doesn't mean you can't get started. So I want you to know that even if you don't find that right broker, I mean, it would be great if you could, but I would not take any next steps because you don't have the right broker, right? Because in the process of finding that right broker, or trying to find that right broker, you may find somebody else, and that's just where you start. And then as you start to grow and scale, that could lead you to others. Because at the end of the day, those types of brokers who are um, very experienced and have a lot of skill set, right? Their time is incredibly valuable. So if you go to them and you're like, hey, can I buy you some coffee? That's not worth their time, right? And so they're just at different levels. And again, it has nothing to do of you personally. It's just they're very clear on how they want to spend their time. And so you do have to, do some work to get to the level where you can get someone that attention. But again, don't let that hinder you or from starting. So you just start somewhere, and as you grow, your reputation, right, the network you surround yourself with will put in a good word for you, and then you'll get access to that person.
So I dropped something in the chat that y'all might find valuable. It's just a general checklist of questions to ask a potential property manager. So yeah, hopefully
Awesome,
you like
Erica.
that. Yeah, damn, I
Yes,
know
that's
we're
great. Thanks so much, Erica.
and
Good stuff.
I was trying, yeah, thank you. I was trying to adjust my settings and I dropped out for like 2 minutes. So I didn't know if you were talking about a financial broker or a real estate broker in the last couple sentences.
Yeah, so maybe Erica could. So if you guys don't know, Erica is a broker herself. So the question was from Len: if how does someone who is just getting started be able to get a broker with a lot of experience to work with them?
Like a real estate broker. I mean, I'm a broker. I'm a top agent in my market. I was 61 out of over 10,000 licensed agents on Oahu. And I absolutely take the time to deal with everybody, every client personally. If it's someone that maybe we have a personality difference and think we don't want to work together, I would give them to one of my agents. But no property is too small. And in fact, I was telling somebody at a seminar yesterday, I prefer not luxury. They're like, who wants to do luxury? Everybody's like, I do. No, thank you. Above 2 million, they really start to turn into dickheads. I like to stay in the lower range, to be perfectly honest. Like I have somebody right now buying a $285,000 condo, and we bargained them down. We went back and forth, and we got them at 276. That is about as cheap as you can possibly get on Oahu, by the way. And
That's
but that makes me happy, and he's grateful. And it is not too little. If somebody thinks you're too little for them, well, then maybe their head is too big for themselves.
yes.
That's just
Thank
my
you,
personal
Erica.
opinion.
No, I concur. So yeah, Erica is a unicorn. Not everybody thinks like Erica does. But
Yeah.
that's why she's so successful, right? Even in Oahu, where prices are exorbitant. But we're lucky that we know Erica, right? But there's not enough Ericas in this world, and so to get to someone like her, it's a numbers game. You just have to meet as many people. Like so, put yourself out there, find
Word of
people,
mouth.
and
Word of
then
mouth
word of
too.
mouth.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
ask people about property managers because, like, I will tell you too in Fort Bragg to never ever freaking use. I don't have a good one in Fort Bragg. Sorry about that, but I can tell you who not to use because that's why I sold my property, and also why I went into property management partially. Partially, it leads to sales, and also there are too many shitty property managers out there, and so I want to save people from experiencing them. So, and I like what I do. For me, it's like I do make a lot of money, but I'm not trying to grow or scale anymore. I'm happy. I can take really good care of people and I'm good. This is my second career. I've been doing it for almost 10 years now. I'm pushing 50. I'm chill. I'm good. So yeah, just find somebody who's not like just so uptight, I guess. I don't know. But word of mouth is really good.
Yeah, because
We love Erica. We just have to say she's just a rock star. We just
she
love
really
her.
is.
And I would say, I think coming back to you, and it's getting started. It's that networking because, like Erica was mentioning, it's just creating those connections. You might not feel you're at the level of the person you want to work with, but guess what? If you have that other person that is the friend of the person you want to work with, they're putting good work for you, and now you get to work with that person that otherwise might not work with you. So I totally agree that networking is the first step to everything.
Yes, good stuff. Are there any other questions? Let me see. I'm gonna look in the chat. Erica, I'm not Erica, Whitney, were there any other questions?
I don't see any other questions in the chat. Let's see.
There's one from John Carlo about getting paid or how they get paid. It's
Yeah.
right on the Waze survey link.
Why don't you go ahead and read it, Dane? I don't see it.
It says, I'm sure somebody just moved it. I'm sure all those people you need on your team needs to get paid. So do they get paid during, after a purchase, or do they get paid up front, which then results in a setback?
Okay. They do need to get paid, but they will they get compensated for helping you, but of course the compensation comes after the transaction. But I would tell you, anybody who has the mindset that you're looking for in this, they don't worry about the money. They know that if they do their job and do it well and they help you achieve your goals, the money's going to come. That's the mindset that they have.
Does anybody else have any more questions? With that,
Me, I have one.
Okay, go ahead, Ari.
Yeah. I have one last question, and I think it will give us a good closure to our topic today. What was the biggest lesson you learned on your investing journey so far?
Ah, so many lessons. But honestly, it was really the message I shared today, which is it really comes down to who, not how. And especially when I was trying to buy that property in Wisconsin, because it was just such a stark reminder. I would tell you, it was not the best deal we've ever done. It definitely doesn't cash flow anywhere near like some of our other properties in other states. But we were able to get to closing, and to know that we were able to do that. We were living in Japan at the time. The property that we sold was in Colorado. So I had a broker relationship there already. So that broker took care of all the things that I needed to be able to prepare that property to sell. And it was a cash offer too. It was a great deal. And I wouldn't have been able to have that without that broker. So that broker, Michelle Bennett, she found me another investor who was able to do it cash. And I think it was like less than like a 2-week closing. But she found that, and again, she did all the things to prepare that property to sell. Worked with the title company, worked with the financing for the loans to make sure all the things that we needed to do were taken care of. And I was able to do everything remotely, like all digital transaction. She also helped me find the 1031 agent that I needed to do that type of closing. I did find the broker in Wisconsin, thanks to Heather's dad, and did the interview. But again, I sold the property in Colorado, thanks to that broker who connected me to that 1031 agent to execute that deal. And then I found the broker in Wisconsin that helped me buy the property. And if you guys aren't familiar with 1031, there's a lot of time constraints. That's the main challenge with it. It's great for reducing, not having to pay capital gains, but being able to find a property in a seller's market where you're competing in 45 days is incredibly stressful. But that broker was so awesome, and that whole like he was just such the right fit for me. I didn't even have to ask. Like he already knew. Like he was very proactive and he leaned forward and he's like, Anne, what do you want? What do you need? And he just put everything together in such a way. And I remember it was actually a very stressful closing. Because normally, right, if you can't get someone to do something, then you do it yourself. Well, I didn't have that option. I was in Japan. I wasn't going to fly to Wisconsin to try to get things done, right? So I leaned heavily on him, and he blew it out of the park. He took care of everything. And so, that big lesson, it was not just a lesson in real estate investing, but also in life, in that, I knew what I wanted and I didn't know how I was going to get there, but, the universe just showed up and had all those people come into my life. And the fact that I was able to prove that it doesn't matter where in the world you are. I was living in Japan, but I was traveling to like Guam and to like I was doing all sorts of things, and I was able to do all those transactions remotely using Zoom to interview, using email to communicate, using I think I had Google Voice at the time to make phone calls if I needed, a remote notary. Everything was done digitally. And I think for someone who's here on this call, knowing that technology today will allow you, if you have a device and reliable internet, you can do real estate investing no matter where you are.
Well, that's a great note to end on. Thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
Anne.
Mhm.
We're almost at the 90-minute mark here, so I'm gonna go ahead and do some closing remarks. If you have questions still, hang out to the end. I got like just a couple minutes of closing remarks, and then if you want to stay on and chat with Anne, chat with each other, go ahead. This is gonna be our program for the rest of the year. We like to do these so that they build on each other. So Anne today talked about finding a real estate deal, building a team, getting started, the basics, the fundamentals. In March, we're going to be talking about analyzing a deal. In May, we're going to be talking about financing a deal. In August, protecting assets. And in October, integrating AI into your side hustle, into your real estate business, how to perfect that. You'll also see there in white, highlighted in white, we have the summit coming up, and that is our yearly conference. So I'm going to go ahead and talk more about that. That will be happening April 1st and 2nd. This is our annual conference held in Guam. Anne, do you want to talk more about this? I think this is near and dear to Anne's heart. So do you want to plug the summit real quick?
Nope, you could just show the video. I think the video will say
Okay.
it all.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and play a quick video, our little promo here for the conference.
Unlock 2024. The Asia Pacific Real Estate Investing Summit returns in 2026. Stronger, bigger, and ready to build on more investment opportunities. This April, Guam hosts a dynamic gathering of U.S. real estate experts, investors, professionals, and others across the Asia-Pacific region.
Join keynote speakers and industry leaders as they break down real strategies, creative model financing, and cross-border investment opportunities.
This summit is built for entrepreneurs, business owners, professionals, and anyone interested in building wealth, whether you're joining us from Guam or abroad.
And it's the perfect opportunity to understand and expand into Asia-Pacific investment markets.
Learn from experts, participate in engaging panel discussions, and dive into master classes designed to elevate your investment strategy.
Plus, enjoy optional add-ons, including our exclusive property tours, cultural experiences, and our spring break of case program.
Tickets start at $4.97 for general admission.
Upgrade to VIP or Platinum for preferred seating, exclusive lunches, private master classes, and anything else I might have forgotten.
Cultural excursions and premium swag. Day 1 takes place at the Hyatt Regency Guam.
And Day 2 continues at the Guam Museum, Guam's iconic historical landmark.
Are limited.
Secure your tickets today.
Awesome. So anybody has any questions about that, let me know. We're have ticket sales starting soon. If you have any questions about the network, staying in touch, these are the places you can get in touch with us. We're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and we have our email there. YouTube is where we post the recordings of this. So this, if you missed part of it, or you know somebody who needs to hear this information, you can send that to them if you want to reference it later. All the recordings are on YouTube. I know, like I said earlier, we had several people ask about buying in Japan. We do have recordings from our previous sessions about folks who bought in Japan uploaded on our YouTube, also at Asia Pacific Investor Network. So check it out there. If you are interested in hosting or starting your own meetup group, let us know. You can scan the QR code right there. I don't know if you guys remember the bubble chart at the beginning. Those are all our locations that have active communities of people overseas and in the region that are gathering and learning together and having sessions. These are some of the locations that are open. If you're in Japan, Misawa, Camp Zama, Sasebo, Atsugi, Korea, visit Kusan, Camp Walker, Camp Carroll. So let us know if you're interested in hosting. Just reach out to us through there and we'll get in touch with you. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close the formal portion. Thank you everybody for coming. Really appreciate having you here. And if you want to go ahead and stay on, I think Anne is willing to hang out for a little bit longer and answer any questions if anyone didn't get their question answered. So have a good one.